I knew what trust was until it shattered like glass beneath my feet. 5 years with Emma, and I thought I knew what love meant. We met during our senior year of college, both studying literature, but somehow never crossing paths until that rainy afternoon in the campus library. She had paint on her fingers, bits of blue and green under her nails from her art elective. I remember thinking how beautiful the contrast was against the yellowed pages of the poetry book she was reading. Emma became my world. We graduated together, moved into a small apartment downtown, and built what I thought was an unshakable foundation. She painted murals on our walls while I wrote articles for the local newspaper. We weren't rich, but we were happy. At least, I thought we were. The signs were there looking back. The late nights at art shows that I couldn't attend because they were exclusive. The mysterious text messages that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. The sudden password changes on her phone. Classic signs, really. But love has a way of blinding you to the obvious. I found out on a Tuesday. There's something particularly cruel about discovering your life is a lie on a random weekday. I had come home early from work, thinking I'd surprise Emma with takeout from her favorite Thai place. Instead, I was the one surprised. His name was Marcus. He was her mentor from the art community, in our bed, in our home. The place where I had whispered dreams about our future, plans for a family, for forever. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just stood there, holding a bag of pad thai that was growing colder by the second, watching as they scrambled for clothes and excuses. Emma cried, of course, said it didn't mean anything, said it had only happened a few times. Then she changed her story. It had been going on for months, but she loved me, not him. She was confused. I wasn't. For the first time in months, maybe years, I saw with perfect clarity. I placed the takeout bag on the kitchen counter, packed a duffel bag with essentials, and walked out. My phone buzzed constantly that night as I checked into a motel on the edge of town. 57 text messages and 23 missed calls. I turned it off and slept for 14 hours straight. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I stayed with my friend Alex, sleeping on his couch while I looked for a new place. Emma's voice became a constant presence on my voicemail. I listened to each message once, then deleted it. The progression was textbook: denial, anger, bargaining, and finally, acceptance. Her final message was simple. I'm sorry I wasn't the person you thought I was. I'm sorry I wasn't the person I thought I was either. I found an apartment across town, a studio with large windows and good light. It was empty, like me. I filled it with secondhand furniture and new memories, ones that didn't include her. I deleted our pictures from my phone, returned her books that had mixed with mine, and tried to excise her from my life like a surgeon removing a tumor. Clean edges, minimal scarring. That was the goal. But trust doesn't heal like skin. It doesn't form a neat scar that fades with time. It leaves jagged edges that catch on everything new that comes along. The first time I tried dating again was 6 months after Emma. Her name was Olivia, a kindergarten teacher with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. We met for coffee, which turned into dinner, which turned into walks in the park and movie nights. Things were going well, I told myself. This was progress. Until the night Olivia didn't answer my text for 3 hours. She had been at her sister's, helping with her newborn nephew, completely innocent. But those 3 hours had sent me spiraling into a dark hole of suspicion and fear. I checked her social media accounts, analyzed her previous messages for inconsistencies, and even drove by her apartment to see if her car was there. When she finally responded with a simple, "Sorry, crazy night with the baby. Talk tomorrow," I realized how far I had fallen. I had become someone I didn't recognize, suspicious, controlling, paranoid. I ended things with Olivia the next day, giving some vague excuse about not being ready. The truth was, I wasn't ready to trust anyone, including myself. Months passed. I threw myself into work, got promoted, and bought a plant for my apartment that somehow survived despite my inconsistent care. I started therapy, something I had always dismissed as unnecessary. Dr. Chen became my weekly checkpoint, the person who helped me untangle the knots Emma had left behind. Trust, Dr. Chen said during one session, is not about finding someone who will never hurt you. That person doesn't exist. It's about finding someone worth the risk. I nodded, but didn't believe her. Risk seemed foolish. Safety was in solitude. Then came the day Alex invited me to his birthday dinner. "Just a few friends at that new Italian place," he said. "You can't keep hiding, man. It's been over a year." I agreed, mostly to get him off my back. That's where I met Sarah. She wasn't what I expected. She wasn't trying to be noticed, unlike most people at the table. She spoke deliberately, listened intently, and laughed with her whole body when something genuinely amused her. She was Alex's colleague from the architecture firm, recently moved from Chicago after a breakup of her own. We ended up sitting next to each other, and conversation came surprisingly easily. She told me about her passion for sustainable design, her collection of vintage cameras, and her disastrous attempt at making sourdough during the pandemic. I found myself telling her about my writing, my newfound interest in hiking, and even, surprisingly, a bit about Emma. "That sounds incredibly painful," she said when I briefly mentioned the cheating. No platitudes, no immediate judgment, just acknowledgement of the pain. By the end of the night, I had her number, but I didn't use it right away. I kept thinking about what Dr. Chen had said about risk. Was Sarah worth it? More importantly, was I capable of taking that chance again? 2 weeks later, I texted her. Simple, casual. Asked if she wanted to check out a photography exhibit I'd heard about. She said yes. We spent 3 hours looking at black and white landscapes, talking about perspective and shadow. It was effortless in a way that made me suspicious. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't. Not that day anyway. We started seeing each other regularly, but I kept my walls high. I didn't talk about the future. I didn't leave things at her place. I checked my phone less frequently when she didn't respond right away, which was progress. But my mind still created scenarios of betrayal in the quiet moments. Sarah noticed. Of course she did. She was observant by nature and profession. "You know," she said one evening as we walked along the riverfront, "I'm not going to break you." "I didn't say you would," I replied, defensive. She stopped walking and turned to face me. "You don't have to say it. You're waiting for it. I can feel it every time you pull back, just when things start to get real." I stared at the water, unable to meet her eyes. "I'm trying." "I know you are," she said, taking my hand. "But is it fair to punish me for someone else's mistakes?" Her question hit me like a physical blow. Was that what I was doing? Punishing Sarah for Emma's betrayal? Making her prove herself worthy of a trust that I was incapable of giving? That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed our conversation and all the moments over the past few months when I had held back, protected myself at the expense of what could have been building between us. I realized that in my effort to avoid being hurt again, I was preventing myself from experiencing anything real at all. The next morning, I called Dr. Chen and scheduled an emergency session. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted after explaining the situation with Sarah. "I want to trust her, but it feels like jumping off a cliff." Dr. Chen smiled, that knowing smile that used to irritate me, but now brought comfort. "That's exactly what it is. Trust is a leap of faith, but you're not the same person you were when Emma betrayed you. You're stronger now, more aware. You'll survive if Sarah hurts you, but you might miss out on something wonderful if you don't give her a real chance." I knew she was right. The question was whether I had the courage to act on it. That weekend, I invited Sarah to my apartment for dinner. I cooked, which was risky in itself given my limited culinary skills, but I wanted the evening to be special. As we ate my slightly overcooked pasta, I took a deep breath and decided to jump. "I need to tell you something," I said, setting down my fork. "I've been holding back with you because I'm terrified. After Emma, I convinced myself that keeping people at a distance was safer than risking heartbreak again. But I don't want to live like that anymore, especially not with you." Sarah reached across the table and took my hand, her eyes never leaving mine. "I'm not asking for guarantees," I continued. "I know those don't exist, but I want to try, really try with you. If you're willing to be patient with me while I figure out how to trust again." Her smile was soft, understanding. "I've been patient this long, haven't I?" That night was a turning point. Not a magical cure. I still had moments of doubt, still found myself checking her stories for inconsistencies, still felt the cold grip of fear when she mentioned male colleagues or old friends. But now, when those feelings surfaced, I talked about them. With her, with Dr. Chen, sometimes with Alex. I stopped letting them fester in silence. Sarah, for her part, showed a patience I hadn't thought possible. She understood when I needed reassurance, didn't take offense when my insecurities flared, and gently but firmly called me out when I was being unreasonable. She shared her own vulnerabilities too, her fears from her past relationship, her worries about her career, her complicated relationship with her parents. 6 months into our relationship, Sarah was offered a major project in Seattle. 3 months of on-site work, a huge opportunity for her career. "I want you to come visit," she said as we discussed the details. "I know long distance isn't ideal, but we can make it work. I'll be back every other weekend and maybe you can fly out once a month." The old me would have seen this as the beginning of the end. Distance creates opportunity for deception, my wounded mind would have insisted. Instead, I felt a surprising calm. "We'll figure it out," I said, and meant it. The night before she left, as we lay in bed talking about her upcoming project, Sarah propped herself up on one elbow and looked at me intently. "You know what I realized today?" she asked. "I'm not worried about us while I'm gone. Not even a little bit. A year ago, I would have been. My ex made me feel like I constantly had to check in, prove myself. But with you, even with everything you've been through, I feel secure. It's kind of amazing." Her words washed over me like a revelation. In my focus on learning to trust her, I hadn't realized that she had been learning to trust me too. We were building something together, brick by steady brick. The 3 months of long distance were challenging but strengthening. We talked every day, shared the mundane details of our lives, and when doubts crept in, for either of us, we addressed them directly. When she mentioned a dinner with her project team that included her attractive colleague James, I felt the familiar twinge of jealousy, but chose to ask about the restaurant's food instead of interrogating her about seating arrangements. When I flew out to visit her in Seattle, we spent a rainy weekend exploring the city, taking ferry rides, and creating new memories together. In her temporary apartment, with the Space Needle visible from the window, I realized something profound. I was happy, not cautiously optimistic, not waiting for disaster, but genuinely happy. Sarah completed her project and returned home. Our relationship deepened, became more certain. We started talking about moving in together, tentatively at first, then with increasing excitement. A year after we met, we found a 2-bedroom apartment halfway between our offices, with enough space for her drafting table and my writing desk. The day we moved in together, as we unpacked boxes and argued good-naturedly about where the couch should go, I caught myself watching her. She was hanging a photograph she had taken of us on our Seattle trip, carefully measuring to make sure it was level. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. There was a smudge of dust on her cheek, and she was humming softly to herself. In that moment, I realized that while I had been focused on learning to trust her, something even more important had happened. I had learned to trust myself again, to trust my judgment, my worth, my ability to pick someone who would value me as I valued them. Emma's betrayal had broken something in me, but the pieces had reformed into something different, something stronger. The Japanese have a concept called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold, highlighting the breaks instead of hiding them. The result is something more beautiful than the original, the golden seams telling the story of what was broken and how it was healed. That evening, after we'd made a dent in the unpacking and ordered pizza because we were too tired to cook, Sarah and I sat on our new couch in our new home. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, both of us exhausted but content. "Hey," I said softly, "I never properly thanked you." She looked up at me curious. "For what?" "For being patient, for giving me the time and space to figure things out, for showing me that what happened with Emma wasn't the end of my story." Sarah smiled, that full, genuine smile that had first caught my attention at Alex's birthday. The choice to see someone's brokenness and stay anyway. I pulled her closer, overwhelmed by gratitude for this woman who had helped me find my way back to trust. Not blind trust. I don't think I'll ever have that again, and maybe that's not a bad thing. But a trust built on honesty, communication, and the courage to remain vulnerable despite knowing the risks. Learning to trust again after betrayal isn't a straight line. It's a winding, sometimes backward-moving journey with no fixed destination. There are still days when Sarah's phone chimes and I feel that momentary tightness in my chest, that whisper of doubt. But now I recognize it for what it is, an echo, not a truth. Emma's betrayal taught me that trust can be broken. Sarah's love taught me that it can also be rebuilt, stronger than before. And somewhere along the way, I learned the most important lesson of all, that trusting others begins with trusting yourself, to survive, to choose wisely, and to remain open to the possibility of love, even when it feels like the greatest risk of all. As I sit here now, watching Sarah sketch designs for our future home, a small house outside the city with room for a garden and maybe someday a family, I know that trust isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward despite it, to open your hands and release the tight grip of control, allowing something new and uncertain to grow in its place. And that, perhaps, is the bravest thing any of us can do.